Our planet's been around for about 4.5 billion years. That's a really long time. But in just a tiny, tiny sliver of that time, one single species has become a force of nature. That species? Yeah, that's us. So the huge question scientists are grappling with is when exactly did we go from just living on the planet to fundamentally changing it? So when did the age of humans truly begin? Sounds like it should be a simple question, right? Well, it's not. Pinning down the exact start date is one of the biggest and most complicated debates happening in science right now. It's like a geological detective story with massive clues and even bigger consequences for our future. The name they've given this proposed new age is the Anthropocene. It comes from Greek words meaning human and new. And the idea is pretty simple, but also kind of mind-blowing, that our activity has so deeply changed everything from the air we breathe to the oceans that we've actually pushed Earth into a whole new geological state. We've changed the rules of the game for the entire planet. So to really get a grip on how big a deal this is, we need to take a step back and look at where we came from. For about the last 11,700 years, ever since the last ice age ended, we've had it pretty good. This incredibly stable period is called the Holocene. You can think of it as the geological sweet spot. It was just perfect, allowing human civilization to sprout up and absolutely flourish. But here's the kicker. The whole argument for the Anthropocene is that the Holocene is over. That chapter is closed. We started a brand new one, and this time it's not being written by natural cycles. It's being written by us. Okay, so if we're in a new age, when did the clock start ticking? This is where it gets really fun, because if you ask the experts, you don't get one answer. You get four major, competing ideas, and each one points to a totally different moment when we hit the gas. And these four contenders are all over the map, spanning thousands of years. We're talking about the dawn of farming, the first real wave of globalization, the Industrial Revolution, and that crazy boom time right after World War II. The wild part is, each of these tells a completely different story about who we are and what we've done. All right, let's dive into the first contender, which is also the oldest. This idea argues that our impact didn't start with factories and smokestacks. Nope, it started way, way back when we first started digging in the dirt. This is the early Anthropocene hypothesis. It points straight at the agricultural revolution. Just picture it, humans clearing huge swaths of forest for the first time, planting rice paddies that pump methane into the air, raising massive herds of livestock. Proponents of this idea say these weren't just local changes. This was the very first time we started tweaking the planet's atmosphere on a global scale, maybe even enough to hold off the next ice age. Now, our second theory jumps thousands of years into the future, to a moment that connected the entire world like never before, but with absolutely devastating results. This one's called the Orbis hypothesis. Orbis is Latin for world, and it pinpoints the year 1610. Why then? Because ice cores show this sudden sharp dip in CO2 levels right at that time. And the reason is tragic. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas led to the death of around 50 million indigenous people. As their farmland was abandoned, forests grew back on an enormous scale, literally sucking so much CO2 out of the air that it left a permanent mark, a scar in the geological record. It was a global signal of a human catastrophe. Okay, next up is the contender most of us are probably familiar with. The moment we started digging up ancient sunlight and burning it like there was no tomorrow. Of course, we're talking about the Industrial Revolution, pegged to around the year 1800. After James Watt's steam engine really got going, we unlocked the incredible power of coal, and that changed everything. For the first time, our progress was fueled by burning fossil fuels, and all that CO2 began its slow, steady, and relentless climb into our atmosphere. But what if all of that, the farming, the early globalization, even the Industrial Revolution, was just the warm-up act? Our final hypothesis argues the real shift, the moment we went into overdrive, happened much, much more recently. This is the Great Acceleration, and this chart really says it all. I mean, just look at it. For thousands of years, CO2 was stable around 280 parts per million. By 1950, after the Industrial Revolution, it had crept up to 311. But after 1950, it's a vertical launch. Population, consumption, energy use, pollution, everything just exploded in this classic hockey stick curve that has totally redrawn our planet's future. So you've got four really strong candidates. How on earth do scientists actually decide? Well, they go looking for something they call a golden spike. To make a new epoch official, you can't just have a good theory. This is serious business. It's about rewriting Earth's official history book. So you need to find one specific place on Earth that has a physical marker, a chemical trace, a layer of fossils that clearly shows the global change. It's like finding the perfect spot to hammer a literal golden spike into the planet's timeline and say, right here, this is exactly where the new age began. And you are not going to believe this, but after searching all over the world, the scientific body in charge thinks they found it in the mud at the bottom of a small, deep lake in Ontario, Canada. So why Crawford Lake? Well, it's a bit of a geological marvel. Because it's so deep and narrow, its water layers don't mix. That means the sediment at the bottom is perfectly preserved in yearly layers, like tree rings. And what did they find in a layer from around the year 1950? A clear, unmistakable, and totally artificial signal, plutonium, from Cold War nuclear bomb tests. It's a global human fingerprint that simply did not exist on Earth before that moment. But here's where this story takes a sharp turn. Because this debate isn't just about geology and plutonium. Choosing a start date is a deeply political act, because it forces you to answer another question. Who's responsible? Just think about it for a second. Each starting point tells a different story of blame. If you pick the agricultural revolution, you're saying this is on all of us. It's just a consequence of civilization. But if you choose 1610 or 1800, the story narrows, focusing on colonialism and industrial capitalism born in Western Europe. And if you choose 1950, the responsibility gets shared more broadly across both developed and, more recently, developing nations. As the source material for this explainer notes, some arguments put the responsibility squarely on very specific groups. So pinpointing a start date isn't just a scientific label, it's about assigning historical blame. And with that comes a whole lot of ethical and political baggage about who should fix the mess we're in. And this really gets to the heart of it all. Because the story we decide to tell about how this all began is going to shape how we think about how it's all going to end. So, while the geologists might find their perfect golden spike in the plutonium from 1950, that doesn't just erase the thousands of years of human impact that came before it. You could say the Great Acceleration wasn't the start of the fire. It was the explosion. The fuse had been lit a long, long time ago. So this debate over a single date is really a debate over our own identity. Are we a species that has been slowly changing the planet for millennia? Or are we a species that suddenly went way off course in the 20th century? How we answer that doesn't just define our past, it defines how we're going to face the future. So maybe the biggest question isn't just when the Anthropocene began, but who gets to write the next chapter?